How are you this morning?
Good, how are you?
Terrific. Except
Good
it's
to
too
hear.
cold outside for me.
It,
I'm an old man. I don't like that.
it is a little chilly, but yeah. And it's actually warmer today than it was earlier in the week, so
I think you're right.
yeah.
Yeah, they're just. There you go. By the way, that's awesome.
We should do that during the
Just get up here like.
Joe. Nobody sat on this side of the room, but if they sat on this side of the room, Carlos and Shane wouldn't be behind the podium.
What? Explain that again.
So you know how they were complaining about how they were behind the podium? All those people sitting there, they're behind the podium. If they were all on this side of the room, they'd be looking across and they wouldn't be behind the podium. Yeah, everybody came in and sat on that side. Yes.
Oh,
Good.
Merry Christmas.
Good. Merry Christmas.
This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
How long did it take to get all over this like this?
We spent about 2.5 hours yesterday setting it all up, plugging everything in, and making sure it works.
And it's so inviting. I can live here all day long without being tired.
Yeah.
We have our own computer.
Your own
I
screen
have
in front of
my
you,
own
yeah.
iPad and screen behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for doing
Yeah.
this.
No problem.
new ways to be used. One of the things that happens with the larger releases is move away from the studio. But now we have microphones to use as well. We don't need to use those. And as a reminder, the last year or so we've been broadcasting if you listen to these live, you can find us by going to udoc.com and there's a link there. Or you can go to youtube.com/UtahDOC and find us listed live. Now, this reminder, we looked at some of the archive commission meetings, and the video is fine, but the audio is not. So we often lose the audio. So those that are making presentations, those that are asking and answering questions, we ask that you speak clearly into the microphone so that the archive of our meeting properly records what we transpired. We appreciate your attendance here today. We're grateful to have you here with December and the West Holding Network information. We together. We're appreciative of all of your attendance and look forward to it. Let's start with a few introductions. First of the commission and then of the UDOC staff. We excuse Lou Kramer, a member of the commission who is out of the state, living back east with his family for 20 years. So he is not here, but the other commissioners are here. Let's start over here to my left with Martin Kamadi and we'll introduce the commission and then the UDOC. Good morning and Merry Christmas to all. Thank you for this gift. Let's give this beautiful Christmas gift. Good morning. I'm Kent Millington. I represent Region 3, which is across the central part of the state from the U.S. and out of Congress. And Merry Christmas to all. We hope you have a great and safe and sane holiday celebration.
Thank you.
Among the great people of Utah. I have lived in Utah for 3 decades. I see the brightest stars in the universe in public organizations to get highways. I work in Utah. Thank you for this. Merry Christmas to all of you. Good rock show.
I'm Dawn Watt. I am the newest commissioner on Commission of Water and
Thank you very much for the commission. We also recognize Heather Barthold, our assistant. It actually makes this possible. If it wasn't for her hard work, we'd be up here wondering what we were doing. So we appreciate very much Heather's good work.
I just want to say one other thing that Representative Lindsay kindly to receive the Marshall Award.
All right, Arnold. Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Mark, what are you guys doing?
Arnold, have you introduced yourself?
Brian Adams, Region 2 Texas.
go on through the communications, and I am going to be really aggressive on trying to make sure everybody's speaking into the mic. We have thousands of people watching on our website, or at least 12. 12,000. They can't hear if you're not speaking into the microphone. No matter how well you project, you got to get the message. So we projected on that. So it's really didn't hold out.
I am Mark, the traffic
You might notice that we're probably going to have a report from the traffic manager.
Sorry, I have to stand and sign the letters and
Right, well, let's see if it works. Well, they're not talking. I'm Grant Potter, Communications.
All right, well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. We're also appreciative of the other people who are here. We recognize you, and to start our meeting, we're going to open it up to public comments. If there are people here who want to address the commission at this point in time in public comment, we invite you to come up to the front, introduce yourself, and please address the commission.
Morning. My name is John Arthur. I'm the new transportation director for Salt Lake City. I've spent, after 7 wonderful years at Wasatch Front Regional Council, had the opportunity to work for our capital city, and so I took it. I just decided I'd come just take a couple minutes and introduce myself, mention how grateful I am for the wonderful partner that UDOT is for us and many other cities around the state. If you, I guess one takeaway that I would hope that you would all take from here is that when you think of high-growth areas in the state, I hope that you think of Salt Lake City and not just the areas on the periphery. Salt Lake City is for housing and business, and we have a lot of transportation. Moving forward, our 3 top priorities in the coming years are safety first and foremost. We want streets where we want to have the safest streets in the state, frankly, in Salt Lake City. We'd like to lead the way on the march towards 0 fatalities, particularly for the most vulnerable users, those who are outside of their vehicles. So safety, the other high priority, we just adopted our first transit master plan. As we grow vertically, we need to figure out how to move people by foot and by transit. That's the only way we're going to be able to continue to thrive and grow as a city. So that's another big priority for us. And then we have 3 strategic areas or corridors that is putting a lot of interest and investment and planning and effort into, and that's the Foothill Drive corridor, the State Street corridor, and I'm working closely with the staff right now, working to make State Street a premier address for both residents and for businesses. And then the northwest quadrant area, general area on the west side of the city, which is actually booming right now with warehouse and industrial development, and a lot of major needs out there, and we continue to look forward to a partnership with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commission. I'm Ron Whitehead. I'm Public Works Director for Washington County. I just wanted to take a minute to update you on one or two projects we've had going down our way, and we appreciate that. The first one is what we consider one of our more important ones we're working on right now is the Zion Corridor Hotspot funding. We've been going through the process of trying to rate the applications that have come in for that with Rick Torgerson and his group, and it's been an excellent process to see how things have lined out, and it's starting to sift the projects out as to what should be most important. We're working on some corridor connectors and everything below that will fall into place, opportunity for some transit and some trails and bikes. So we appreciate going through that process with Rick and his group. It's been very good for us. The Northern Corridor, which you've been briefed on, we're still working on that. Group, we've talked about some things that we can accomplish and who's best to work on those areas, whether it's UDOT or the county or BLM. We had a meeting just this past week with the group that's working on that, so we're still moving forward with that, hoping we can work on something that everybody will come to agreement on, but if not, we're still working on a legislative opportunity back east that will hopefully be there if this doesn't come through for us. We appreciate your participation in that. It's made a big difference with BLM and sitting at the table to realize that UDOT is involved with that too, and their involvement with our roads. A couple other projects, Dixie Drive Interchange is open and functioning, and seems to be functioning very well. We appreciate that. It's alleviated some of the traffic congestion, getting on and off the freeway, with a much better interchange. And the big one is they're starting Bluff Street project. That's one that's been highly talked about for years, and they've started working on that. It's becoming more visible up there, and everybody's anticipating getting that through, not anticipating maybe going through the construction period, but it'll be a good thing once it's through. So just wanted to say thank you for all your help down there. We appreciate it. And I mentioned to Carlos earlier, this is always a good time to come to St. George. So at some point I'm going to have to sneak out of here, keep Noggy home, and everybody else lives down south. I just, bluer skies and warmer temperatures are calling my name. So thank you. We appreciate all of it.
Thank you very much, Ron. We appreciate the work you do down there. Are there others from the community that would address the commission?
Good morning, Commission. I'm Robert Hale, Mayor-elect of Midvale, Utah. Mayor Joanne D. Savini is, after 20 years, leaving that office, and I want to pass to you our congratulations on the fine work you have done in Midvale City, getting State Street to look like a real street. She often tells the story about property owners along State Street wanting to know how far out they could develop. And so there was a call made to UDOT, where's the property line? And I said, well, it runs curb to curb. And Mayor Savini's response was, I have no curb. We have no gutter. We're about a 2-mile part of US 89 right through Midvale. So may I extend to you thanks for getting that repaired. Now we've got a second Superfund site in Midvale called Jordan Bluffs. It's a redevelopment agency. And we are going to extend Bingham Junction Boulevard right through the middle of it to service it, and on over to where it will connect with, thank you, where it will connect with the Sandy Parkway that comes north out of 90th South, just west of I-15. And so we want to make sure that you've got that on your radar and get that funded. We just the end of November, turned the RDA property over to the developers, Gardner Corporation and Wasatch Properties. And so they have the work to now start working on that. And of course, infrastructure being a road, since there's nothing up on top of that capped site, that will be one of their first jobs. And so we would just like to make sure that you get that on your radar and give some assistance to the city and the area overall. Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you over the next few years.
Thank you very much. You know, it's interesting. I actually grew up in Midvale. And so when I see the development there over the last, I hate to admit it, but the last 60 years, it's really been amazing. So to hear that report and the continued expansion there in Midvale is well received. Thank you for the work you do there. Please.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Wade Bittner, Twilla County Commissioner. And I want to take the opportunity to thank you each for your support and your organization for the Mid-Valley Highway. We've been working on that for over 20 years, and so being able to see the engineering begin and the process is a tribute to you. We appreciate that. Diane McGuire was very helpful, among others in Region 2, and so we appreciate that. I also recognize the structures group here. I'm a member of the non-urban Joint Highway Committee, and we had a challenge that we had to deal with, and we were able to work it out with the structures group, and so we appreciate that. I recognize that we don't get thanks enough to you folks, and as commissioner, I think I've had 4 people tell me thanks in 3 years, so I recognize how valuable that is. We want to thank you again for all your work, and I appreciate it. And wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Are there others that wish to address the commission at this time? Thank you. If not, we'll move forward on our agenda. Our next agenda item is to hear from our partners from the FHWA. Brigitte, we're glad you're here. And sorry that Ivan couldn't make it, but please extend to him our best wishes for this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm Brigitte Mandel with the Federal Plan Administration. And Ivan and I would both like to wish all of you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, please sound that. And we thank you for having us. It was not intentional, but I'm going to start off with a plan that I did notice you have your auditors in the room. But I want to let them know that Federal Highway thinks you have to this is a financial management dashboard that our headquarters actually puts together and they send to us quarterly. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to share it. There essentially are 4 measures on here. The first is a fire index, which meant this kind of measures how we're doing with some required elements of our financial integrity program. And as you can see, we're green within the second measure is about timing and obligation, and it shows that within the time period of when we obligated the funds, that an expenditure has actually happened within 270 days. So that's a measure of showing that we are obligating projects on the time and actually they're ready to go, they're ready to go to construction, and the money is being spent quickly. And as you can see, we're again beating the national average and inactive obligations is something that was on Federal Highway's radar a few years ago, and it was somewhat of a problem nationwide, and there's been a lot of emphasis on that. UDOT continues to do a phenomenal job some new projects and are moving forward. Our percentage, the national goal is that we'd be under 2% nationally of funds, and UDOT is currently at 0.22%. So again, we're doing prompt closeout is about closing out a project. So again, not leaving excess funds on the books. This measures projects that have less than 10% left in their obligation. And then if they haven't had any expenditures in 15 months, so they're not being closed out quickly. The national average on this one is over 11%. UDOT is barely over 1% of projects that we put into that category. And our records, we keep separate records for this, but essentially UDOT tends to close projects out in less than 180 days across the board. So that too is phenomenal. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to share this one with you. Are there any questions on that before I go on?
That was good, and these guys were great.
Absolutely. And I can take some of that credit. I have a number of other items just to go over. The Federal Highway Administration was able to award to UDOT this past month just under $30,000 in technology deployment funds that will go to 5 projects that they have requested, mostly for church changes and on-road projects. So that money is available. On December 4th, the division received the Utah State Freight Plan. This plan was then approved by our headquarters in the division office on December 7th. And so Utah is now able to obligate their state freight program funds. Repurposed earmarks, we talked about this a few times. There's one earmark that Utah has left for just under $10,000. We have been told that that will be repurposed by the end of the month. Section 154, there was a penalty put in place, and the UDOT has requested that NHPP funds be transferred to HSIP. That has actually happened, and those funds are available. About 7.8. And then, maybe not so good. Now, our continuing resolution ends on December 22nd, a few days left. We've been told to expect other continuing resolutions going forward. The impact to Utah is that it just means our federal funds will become we won't be limited. I'd like to extend kudos and a thank you to UDOT. There were 2 events that happened this past month that the division participated in that we really appreciated Utah hosting. That included the pedestrian summit and a HSIP peer exchange that hosted 14 states. Both were very well received and very well organized. Thank you. And lastly, Federal Highways EDC 5 Call for Ideas is out. Round 5 of Everyday Counts is open. We're soliciting for ideas of new innovations that can be included in the Everyday Counts initiative, which is essentially a 2-year program. The website is available, and the call is open through January 18th.
Any questions for the youth? I don't have any question or the comment, Mr. Chairman. Anytime she shows up, we have positive and money's coming. Anytime Ivan shows up, we just leave in the room. So thank you, Brigitte. You're welcome to come back.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Appreciate that. And always appreciate the terrific working relationship that we have with FHWA here in Utah. We'll now move to our UDOT scoreboard.
reports, Randy and Jason. Randy, I think you're leading out.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about our construction program today. We have we've advertised a little slower month. We only advertised 8 projects for a total of $54 million since our last commission meeting, which was on November 7th. So things have slowed down just a little bit, although the dollar amounts are still pretty significant. So that's kind of where we're at there. Anticipate hopefully maybe January it should stay a little slower for a little while just because we've advertised a good portion of our program for this next construction.
Notice that one of those is for the $41 million. The bulk of the $54 million is one project.
In region 1.
Split between region 1 and 2, is that right?
Chris, you want to talk about that? Yeah. Yeah, it was a big project. We've got a lot of big projects, more to come too. Much bigger than that.
Mr. Chairman, did you want the rest of the commission to I-215 involves a...
I think we ought to do that because it's a significant portion of the
Yeah, so, Chris, you threw up your hand if I'm incorrect. You have a microphone here.
Otherwise, you're welcome to check the board.
Yeah, see how it works here. This is a pavement reconstruct project that's going along I-215 on the north of us here. And that 215 section runs down into Salt Lake County, which is the Region 2 project. The bridge reconstruction, we're going to actually be creating a diverging diamond interchange at the Redwood Road I-215 interchange. That portion is in Davis County. The Davis County line is 215 turns to go east. Davis County, Salt Lake County line is just on the south side of 215, so it's a region 1. So project spans 2 regions. Region 1's going to manage this.
Thank you very much. Brett Slater's this project in region. As far as our graphs, this is the last month that we'll show these. We're going to actually move into some live data. I know this is about 2 weeks old, or a week and a half old. So next month we'll have live data, but you can see from that top graph that we've done a lot more activity this time of year than we had last year. Last year we had 120 projects under construction. This year we're about 157 projects under construction. And see the chart below us here shows that we paid out $32 million last year at this time to contractors during the same period. This year we paid out $62 million. So it just goes to show all the activity that's going on in the increased construction from all the funding that we received, which we're very grateful for. Further than that, things are pretty much static from the last report, unless you have any questions.
Notice, however, even though with the increased number of projects, that those projects behind schedule seem to have been reduced.
Yeah, well, it's
yellow to the right of that bar.
Well, a lot of that is one, our systems improved to pay contractors. Another reason is we have got no snow. And so we've been able to do a lot of work and get those payments made. And so all the projects are on schedule or even ahead of schedule based on the incredible weather that we received for this last fall.
So looking at the top left slide where it talks about the percent of change orders, any idea, that looks like a very small number, which I think is fantastic. Any idea how that compares to other states?
It is low.
Okay.
It's really low. Compared to other states, they're much higher. This is one of the things we focused on for the last, a long time. I mean, it's probably been 7 to 8 years. We were up at one point around 13 to 14%. And what we found out is we weren't scoping projects good enough, and we weren't managing them well. With all the efforts that go on between the project managers and the resident engineers and the regions, are the ones that control and manage this
as well as our contractor community. They know how important it is to maintain our budgets, and they also realize that any money any money we can save on projects will get reprogrammed quickly, which we do here.
That's great. I just thought that was a fantastic number. Thank you.
It's a low number. No, there's a sweet spot. There's, we might be at it right now. It can't be too low because there's always going to be things we miss. We never design a perfect project, but on the other hand, it can't be too high either because that means we're either not managing them well or we didn't design them well.
Any other questions for Andy? Okay. Thank you very much.
So as I bring this up, one of the things Randy mentioned was this good weather, and Commissioner Woodruff mentioned basically our snowplow drivers. So at the start of this week, last year, we used a little bit more than 40,000 cubic yards of salt. This year, not this week, we used about 8,600, so about 21.2%.
Pretty well Jason's teamed that up. So one thing for the commission to remember is the money that's used for plowing the roads, the salt, and equipment for people, that comes out of the operations line item. The commission works in two different line items: construction line item and transportation investment fund line item, the two that you put projects out of. So money, if there's money left over, it rolls back into the transportation fund.
Randy got Heather to help him, I got Robert. And he's stressing out because the numbers are all not showing up this time. I've been really lucky in that running the live version of this has always been we've managed to make it work. This morning, for no reason, all right. So, interestingly enough, it's showing up just fine on Robert's laptop, but so our safety numbers currently we're at 89.3%. So the stuff we had up there 92% to start with, Robert knew was wrong, I knew was wrong, and so we reset it, and now we got nothing. But we're currently sitting at 89.3%. We've dropped a little bit. That's based off of we've had a little bit worse November than we had hoped for. So our fatality numbers dropped a little bit. So we're not at our 100% goal for fatalities. And our crashes and our internal equipment our numbers have gone down a little bit there. So we've been in the last few months in the 90+% range. We've dropped just slightly underneath the 90% overall for our safety goal this last month. So in November, we started getting quick roads. We had more fatalities than we've had for a while. So that bumped our number down a little bit. If you look at where we're at, our fatality numbers too, our 2.5% reduction goal, we're hoping we're going to be right. It's different on years to different. Okay. So we're currently sitting, our 2.5% reduction target, we want to be at 255. That'd be 2.5% less than last year at this time. We're at 263. We're 7 above it. So we had some few good months there through the 100 deadliest days. We talked about how that had improved this year. Unfortunately, this last month had some pretty substantial crashes that resulted in one fatality that I'd like to see. One thing I'd like to see, but that bumped us up about our 2.5% reduction target.
Jason, did that come during that first snow when people aren't ready, or is it relative to weather at all?
Snow usually impacts our crash numbers, but if we get a good heavy snowstorm, people tend to slow down, and so our severity rate of our crashes goes down. So our crash numbers will go up as the time almost will go over that. What we'll see quite often is the after effect after a snowplow is pulled it off. It's still we lost some friction on the road and people pick up their speed. We've been seeing that around the valley this last week with the inversion, whereas it's not snowing, but the roads are fairly slick and people are driving much too fast. And, you kind of see some pretty large multi-vehicle crashes at the country. We see our serious injuries. We're right about our target there on the serious injuries, and employee injury rate will continue to go down, which is a good thing. We haven't loaded the November numbers, and we expect a little bit of an uptick there based off of the accident number. It's not consistent.
Is that again because of the slick roads and unanticipated ice and things like that? If they drive through the construction area?
So this is the injury rate for our actual employees that we noticed down a little bit, and that's usually based off of us getting ready for the winter. So we're loading our plows with the salt spreaders and the plow blades, and it's I mean it's I won't say it's dangerous business, but yeah, and they want to get ready, and you do one, you do two, and maybe you get a little complacent and third one somebody does it. We typically see that in certain places. So, and we typically see an uptick in our equipment damage rate as well during those winter months, because not only is it us sometimes bumping into people in adverse weather conditions, but our exposure gets larger because we're out there with all those snowplows. Everyone's very happy to see, but there's a lot of things going on during the snowstorm. People pay attention. Last year we mentioned the LED whips that we would put on the end of our wind clouds, kind of result of the accident transport canyon with ferry. And so we put those out there. They look really good. As you're driving around, you see some snowplows. They're not all installed yet. They've been all delivered to the region sheds to install, and they've also been put on all their new plows as they're coming out. But if you see this about a 4-foot tall green stick lit up on the end of our wind plows, that's what that's about. Yeah. The visibility is pretty amazing when you see it. You'll notice it. And that's what we want. We want people to notice it and not coming into that area that you might not expect. Blazing. Pretty much it for
Questions for Jason? Do you know?
Thankfully, we typically don't get those multi-fatality crashes. But when you have a low number of fatalities and you get crashed like that, it definitely has a significant. So we're lucky in that we have a fairly low number compared to nationally. Some of the numbers we see in the states. So when you have those multi-fatality crashes, definitely. What we looked at was what could we have done different. We had center-line lumber strips. We had all the appropriate signs. So this was a crash that was a crossover head-on crash that resulted in 5 fatalities. Immediately, we always look for ourselves. What could we have done different to prevent this? We try to do that proactively, but we definitely do it reactively to see if there's something that comes up. I know my folks here at the complex were immediately asking that question and checking into it. Carlos was asking me and asking our folks if it had centerline rumble strips that would have alerted somebody to cross over. Rick's group was immediately looking into it. We look at all of our tools and see if they've been put into place, and in this case they were. So I haven't heard a fatal determination of what the cause of that was. That's a speculation.
Any other questions or comments for Jason? Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate that report. Now we'll have our Region 2 report. Brian and his team had some things to discuss with us, and then we'll actually take an action item later, and one of the things that Brian will report. Brian, we're glad you're here and appreciate the report today.
Well, appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. Most of the presentation will be focused on looking at a couple of projects that we've got on the books that I'm moving forward with on I-15. But before I get into those details, we wanted to just take an opportunity to highlight a couple of projects that we finished just as of late. We look at these, and there's 4 of them up there, and we feel like we've delivered an early Christmas present to Salt Lake County here with these major projects. We were able to all of these projects had the same goal in place, and that was to deliver these before the Thanksgiving weekend, Black Friday. We were successful in all of these 4. And if you can, first project up there is 106 South, which is a shopping season. We've got a lot of good positive feedback on that project. We were also able to deliver our 70th South interchange on Bangor Highway, which is quite a feat. We started this project, started construction in the middle part of May, to the end of part of May, and we opened it up before Thanksgiving. I think that's a record. I mean, that's probably about 5 months, and we've got an interchange completely, pretty much complete and operational right now. So again, you look at the location of this next to a lot of the businesses, and they were pretty excited about having that interchange open up before the holidays. Mountain View Corridor, we continue to move forward with that as well, getting so close to making that connection out onto 201. We completed this segment, which was from 54th to down to 41st South. Awesome project. Held a community event on the opening with a run. A lot of support for the project. Turned out, amazing. And then, of course, the one that's been giving us the most nightmares the last couple of years, due to its location to this facility, is our I-315 rebuild.
It becomes very visible to the people that matter, doesn't it?
Yeah, we have a lot of them in the stretches. Well, anyway, we were able to deliver that project as well. Really good. So, 4 giant presents for Salt Lake County.
Right, before you go, on 106 South, so the yellow line on the left-hand side, the project, except for the bypass, it has the tennis court as well.
This right here? Yeah, it's still the line. So this is basically coming off the off ramp from I-15 and goes right underneath 106 South, right into the mall area. So the lines, this line, these are just shoulder lines. Any bike. Before they took the picture.
Yeah, he's standing on it.
My reindeer. So now let's talk about the I-15 corridor, and what I wanted to do is take just a minute, and hopefully this works. This is a live demo too, but just wanted to give you guys some perspective of the need of these two projects that we've got out in the near future here on I-15 corridor, and also take the opportunity to just kind of show off this tool that we've just been using the last little while. Pretty incredible tool. Which just allows us to make a lot better decisions based on real data than just through our normal process. So right now, this is a live feed of basically Salt Lake County. What this is pulling in is actual Bluetooth data from people that are driving around out on our facilities. So you can see right now, everything in green means it's looking really, really good. Speeds are right at the posted speed limits. When you start seeing the colors change, there's a legend down here. So it'll go black if the road's closed. Red, obviously, is probably less than 60% less than the posted speed, and you can see the graduation down to the green. So what this allows us to do. Right now, it's tracking live, but it has the ability, we can pull it back and see what happened this morning's traffic. We can pull it back to see what the condition was yesterday during the PM peak. And at the same time, you can play it, which it'll show you 5-minute increments and how things change. You can see yesterday we had, which is pretty typical, some pretty congestion on I-15. So this tool will allow us also to go in and pick a segment, and it'll actually give you historic data that goes along with that. So the blue is what we saw that day, and then underneath it, you can see the trend over time of what the travel speeds were in that location. We can do that on. I mean, if we can do that for pretty much any of our segments. If we see that there's a problem, we hear about something, we can go in and pull and look at the data live. Plus, go back and review the history. So that's the tool that we have, which is pretty neat.
That helps you develop your metering algorithms and all the other mechanisms that we have available to try to keep the traffic flow. The results are there. Good.
So I've taken and we've developed just a little video right here showing you the AM peak as well as the PM peak on what happens through Salt Lake County, and more specifically what is happening on I-15. So I'll just play that a little bit, speeds it up a little bit so it doesn't take quite as long, but just you can see at the top there's a time, there's that ticker that tells you what time it is, and you'll notice about 6:37 I-15 starting to fill in. This is AM peak period. Start seeing a little bit come into Sandy. It is 12 volts. Yep. Now you can see the bottlenecks that we experience every day through. There's really two locations. One, there's a section south of 106 that fills in, and then later on there's a section that'll fill in from the I-215, I-15 interchange backwards. Yeah, so both of these, northbound and southbound, a lot of the reasons that we see this is because of the weave and the volumes that are coming off from the side streets. We've got one in particular, looking up at 90th South, where we have a lot of people coming on I-15. At the same time, people are trying to weave over to go to 215, and that friction what causes a lot of the backup. And that happens at most of the intersections as well. Now, this is the one that's the really telling story, is our afternoon or our afternoon peak. So let's play that one. Again, you'll start seeing things show up about 3:30. Never fails. It always, right there at the I-215 merge, and then also right up by 201 as it merges on the I-15. Look at the time. It usually doesn't clear out until about 7 o'clock at night.
How do you account for crashes in this? That impede traffic.
Yeah, but anything that happens with crashes, you'll show up on here. This is real live data. That one of the benefits of this tool is we can actually see a crash on here faster than we can get notification that it happened, because you can immediately see where there's a crash. It'll start turning red.
Okay. Well, so I was just trying to, how do you differentiate between just congestion and congestion caused by a crash?
With this data, it's really tough. What I tried to do here is find a day that we didn't have a lot of crashes along I-15. I could go in and show you some days where we did have crashes, like yesterday, and it's significantly different than worse.
So what you're getting at is a performance measures. We show two things. We look at delay and we also look at reliability. And when you start to look at reliability, that can be impacted by crashes, incidents. And so what you can have a very poor, you can have heavy congestion, a lot of delay, but if it's reliable, that means it's happening every day. And so the solution then is probably something to do with capacity, either increasing capacity or reducing the amount of demand, the amount coming in. If it's an unreliable situation where it's just crashes causing the congestion, then you start to look at things like incident management and how we're going to be responding to those incidents. Maybe we need to have wider shoulders so that when those crashes happen, we have a place to put them. And so there are different solutions based on if it's a reliable issue or a congestion issue. And so these guys have to sit down and kind of parse that apart.
Okay.
This may help answer that a little bit further too, Donna. So basically what I've done here is I've selected a segment down in Draper, and this is northbound. This is between 106 and Bangeter. So I clicked on that line, and this graphic pulls up. So as you look through here, a couple of things really stand out. You've got your timeline throughout the day, and then you've got the travel speeds, So basically what you see is, here's our AM peak, here's our PM peak. what you can see underneath the gray right here, that is kind of gives you an idea of where we are from a spread perspective. So if we were to experience a crash, it may be down in this gray area. So there's some variability through this section. But on average, this is what we're seeing. This is what the dash line is. So with that, on I-15 northbound, we're experiencing in the morning, our peak period is basically from 6:30 to 10 a.m. Huge. And then if you look in the afternoon, it's even worse. That's almost 4 hours from 3 o'clock to 7. And if you look here, I mean, both of these peaks, you're getting down, you're going from 70 miles an hour down to about 30 miles an hour during that time frame. Now, if we look at southbound is similar in the PM. What's interesting is we don't really get the peak in the morning. It's all an afternoon peak. But very similar to the northbound, you've got about a 3-hour window during that time that we get speeds down into the 30 miles an hour range. So hopefully that'll help demonstrate the need for the couple of projects that I'm going to describe.
There's a method. There's a reason why this is being built up.
So the first project, you guys are fully aware, but I'll take a second and go through this. This is a project that was funded a couple of years ago. And we've been progressing that project, and that's our I-15 southbound project. The scope of the project is to add a lane from SR 201 all the way down to 123rd South and tie into the point project there. We are also going to be looking at doing some modifications to the interchange of I-215 to help solve some of those weed issues that we're experiencing. And I guess this one's for the Midvale man. That we are planning also part of the project is to widen 7200 South from the interchange back. Be widening that too. And widening bridges, but that'll make a big, significant difference. So with the project, we're widening to the outside. We'll have some minor sliver takes along the whole length. A lot of this project will fit within our existing network, but there will be a handful along the corridor that we will have to get some construction easements and just some minor right away. No relocations or locations. So the timing, well, currently we are funded at about $180.3 million. Our timeline is next week. December 21st, we're actually going to go through our selection process and select a contractor. So we'll be able to hopefully before Christmas know who that contractor is and see how much money we have left over. But the plan is to start construction on this spring, and it'll be a two-year construction time frame. We're really looking forward to doing this project. We feel that it'll have significant improvements on those travel speeds that we looked at. So the second project that we want to touch on is our northbound project. This project happened really fast. Last year, going into the legislative session and moving forward through our STIP workshop, we were exploring a concept that we thought was going to be really beneficial for this area to help with our lease process. Well, it took fire, and to make a long story short, got funded. So, with the caveat that we would build the project construction spring of 2019. So we were a little nervous. We're like, we've got to go in and make sure that we're building the right project. So we got all of our smart folks together, looked at a number of different alternatives, basically northbound from Bangerter all the way up to I-215. And I can't tell you how many alternatives we looked at, 20 plus alternatives. We wanted to make sure that whatever we built here didn't interfere with our long-term solution. And so really that effort was to define what that long-term solution was, and then see if we could fit it within our scope. So I'm going to take just a second, and this is going to be tough, but I'm going to try to explain what we came up with. So the solution that we ended up liking, and that really has some dramatic improvements along the corridor, was an idea on developing a CD system, which a CD system is, it's basically a facility just off to the side of I-15. That's where all of your on and off movements take place, but you do it, it's separated where it doesn't influence the main flow of I-15 traffic. So just like we talked about, that's the number one reason that causes all of that travel time speed to get so low. So anyway, this concept, and I'll try to explain it quickly, is, so you're looking right here down at the southern end. This is Bangerter Highway, I-15. So basically under this concept, we would create a CD system, which is shown in green. So everybody traveling northbound would have to make a decision at that point on whether they were going to get off at 123rd, 114th, 106th, 90th, and 72nd.
Brian, this is similar to the city system at 9th, 13th, 2100 south within Northland.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, so like, what is it? Yeah, the 9th south, 13th south, and 21st south.
Exactly.
You go off to the right, and then you peel off one at a time. Right?
So anyway, so the green represents the CD system. The blue represents where you have the opportunity to get on and off of the CD system at the different interchanges. The orange is a bridge. So this is 90th south. So basically at 90th south, now if you've made that decision and you're on the green CD system, once you approach 90th south, you'll have three options. One is to go on the purple, which that will allow you to exit and get off at 90th south. The other option is you can continue on the green, which will bring you right back into the I-15 mainline traffic. And then the purple, you can make a decision and you can stay on a CD system, and that will take you all the way up to 72nd and I-215. So the good news is this operates extremely well. I mean, extremely well. I'll show you some data. But the bad news is this is a $400 million project. That's all, yeah. So the way that we viewed this is we said, you know what, this is our long-term solution. But what can we do in the interim, until we can come up with additional funding down the road, and I'll show you some of the data to support this. So we went back to the drawing board and we looked at, well, one more point. This CD system that we have right here was our original concept that we got funding for. We were just only focused at this interchange up to I-215. We looked back at the data. We looked back at the traffic data and analyzed it, and we said, what if we obviously can't afford to build a CD system all the way back to Bangerter, but let's build a CD system right here from 90th up to that 215 and 72nd south. We modeled it. Again, that was our original concept. It works great in this area, but it doesn't fix the problem further south. So we said, what can we do? What can we do similar to what we've done on the southbound side project, you know, to get us to buy us some time? So we looked at just adding a lane, basically from this CD system all the way back down to Bangerter Highway. And you'll see just these little sliver pieces. That's the right-of-way and the pavement that we would need to add that line. So it's very minimal. So our plan is, you know, moving forward, and this is what you guys will be evaluating later in the presentation, is that additional money that it'll take to add that lane, basically from 90th down to Bangerter, and it's about $20 million. So, let me show you some. So this graphic shows you the existing traffic. Let me make sure you're following this. On the left, it's travel speeds. On the bottom is just a location along the corridor. So the very southern end is to the left, and the northern end, 72nd, is to the right. So you'll see right now that blue line is what we're experiencing today. And it correlates with the data that we showed you at the very beginning with our Bluetooth data. We have two bottlenecks. One between south of 106, and then we have one right at the interchange just south of 90th. You can see that travel speeds are down into that 30 miles an hour range. So with our concept of building the CD system from 90th to 215 and then adding that lane all the way down to Bangerter Highway, that's what's shown there in orange. This is the day that we open it. We'll go from 30 mile an hour speeds up to 55 mile an hour speeds. The yellow line shows you what the numbers would look like if we built the full CD system. And it's pretty much your speed, you know, right at the speed limit through that whole corridor. So I'll show you that. So next graph is based on our projections out to 2040. You'll see the orange line is the phased approach, and you'll see even out into 2040, our lowest point is about 44 miles an hour. That's 14 miles an hour greater than what we have today. And then into the future, here's that long-term CD system, which you can see operates extremely well. It's showing us that we've got some work to do a little bit further to the north, and that's something that we'll be working on, trying to get a better understanding. But we feel really comfortable with this phased approach. We're gonna get a lot of good benefit on adding a lane with the combination of the CD system at 90th to 215. And then when the day comes, we do have an opportunity for funding. We have that long-term project, you know, out in the horizon. So with that, any questions?
Any questions to Brian?
I have one.
Please.
Does adding the lane, does that help when we're ready to move to the CD, does that help us achieve that goal
Great.
by having that additional lane?
Yeah, great question. So basically, what we're going to do in this design is, as we're going to keep that future project in our sights. We don't want to do anything with this interim project that would cause us any more extra money, tear out, those kind of things. So we have some locations where we'll be relocating some retaining walls. There's some locations where we'll be doing some modifications to structures. We want to make sure that in this first phase that we build those so that we don't have to come back and tear out a wall or redo a bridge. So it's that. So we're going to try to accommodate that in this first phase design.
Well, I was in Las Vegas this week, and they have that expressway area from Flamingo up to Sahara, and it works very well. And then you don't have to deal with all that merging in and out.
So, Brian, 400 million is going to be the whole project.
Correct.
So you can phase it out, and how much will be each phase?
Yeah. So currently, we'll go back to. So currently, we have funding. We've got 130 million currently funded. We're going to ask later today to add an additional 20 million to the project, which will allow us to add that extra lane.
90 back in
The banker. Yep. So in the future, Nagi, that instead of being a $400 million project in the future, it'll be right around $200 million, $225 million project.
We can afford that. For Mayor Hill, you have 72 million, so we can give you that extra mile. Thank you. You got the okay from Mayor.
To paraphrase Everett Dirksen, a million here, a million there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money.
Yeah. I guess one last comment. Carlos rolled out his top 10 goals at the conference. One of which was going to be we're going to lessen travel demands or travel times in the urban area.
Fits right in.
It fits right in, and I think we're to the point where we're almost ready to just check off the box if we can deliver these two projects. I think we're taking it more towards how far can we beat it. We want to push this as far as possible to see how far we can drive those travel times down. And
excellent concept. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Brian? All right, thank you very much. Very educational and appropriate given the matters of business that are coming up. Thank you, Brian. We appreciate that. Now we go into the business items where we're actually going to spend some of this money. The first item is the consent agenda for the approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the minutes of our previous meeting be approved. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. They've been approved. Bill, time to move into some expenditures here. Given the presentation you just made, you should just call for a vote on 7A1, right?
That's pretty much where I'm at. So the first one that I have is 7A-1. This is that project, I-15 northbound 90th south to I-215. This is scope and a funding addition. Brian just did an excellent job on explaining what that is. We have the same diagrams there in your packet, as well as the seed savings that happened because of this phase EV. That's the first phase on this. So we'd like to seek approval to add the $20 million for the I-15 northbound 90 south to I-215 project.
Move for approval.
Moved. Seconded. that the $20 million be added. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? What an easy way to spend $20 million.
And Brian, when do you start on this? Immediately, you said? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, real
Yes.
quickly, could we have Bill explain where the $20 million is coming from, just so that we can put it on the record that...
Yes, please.
The Mayor Hale already told you that he's giving you that money.
Yeah.
Already got okay.
So Region 2 has been saving up their efficiencies from projects on federal aid projects, saving up to be able to do this. We'll be exchanging those federal funds in another project and freeing up state funds, so this project will stay state funded. But we'll do that behind the scenes. But it is funny they saved some efficiencies in there.
In other projects.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've been bringing this, we've been going through commission. It is available now.
Thank you.
Next item is 7A-2. This is SR 224, SR 248 to Bear Hollow. This is a funding addition. Region 2 is requesting to add $2 million to this project. The original scope was to go into a 3-inch mill and fill on half of the job and come back and do a 1-inch open graded surface course on the full project. But as they were looking at and doing further studies, they realized that they're going to have to do the mill and fill for the whole length. Because of that, they're going to have to add the additional $2 million to be able to do the right treatment on this job. The new project value for this would be $6.5 million. They also have this $2 million available in their pavement rehabilitation program. The location on this is just outside of Park City. Okay, and so we'd like to seek approval to add $2 million to the SR 224, SR 248 to Bear Hollow pavement rehabilitation project.
Motion to approve.
Been moved and seconded that this $2 million be added to the project on 224. Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That's also been approved.
Next item is 7A-3. It's a Region 1 project in coordination with UDOT Traffic and Safety. I'd like to seek approval to add a new project, which is a guardrail replacement project for the STIP. The project is planned and designed using federal funds in this current fiscal year, using the HSIP funds or Highway Safety Improvement Fund. The scope of the work is to replace substandard end treatments and guardrail. There's several projects that they will do this on. As they're listed there, I'm not going to say all those. I get tongue-tied. But you can see the list there of where they would like to do this work. The total is $1.2 million. And so we'd like to seek approval to add the Region 1 guardrail replacement to the STIP as detailed.
Move for approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that this, what is it, 1.2 million be added to the guardrail replacement program for Region 1. Is there any further question or comment? Yeah. Why are we doing wire?
We can...
I don't know about each specific location on here, but a lot of times it'll have to do with the alignment of the roadway, the type of clear zone we have off to the side, what actual departure problem we're trying to resolve. Very seldom, or oftentimes, we'll put concrete barrier in the median to that crossovers. Occasionally we use field barrier. In that case, we have the space to do it. So a lot of it will be site dependent on what we're actually trying to resolve.
So if we have a
We've used it on some roads. You have to narrow up or shorten up the spaces of the individual support posts. But that help?
Thank you. Any further questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That's also been approved.
Okay, this next item is 7A-4. This is an informational item. We had two projects, a passing lane project on US 40, as well as a pavement rehabilitation project on US 40. Both these projects were back-to-back each other. The scope and the funding remaining the same, but in the STIP they'll be combined, and so we just wanted to make you aware of that.
Thank you.
Any questions on it?
Questions on these?
Shouldn't we approve this because it's changing in the STIP items?
Just, yeah. Say because it's just the funding staying the same and the scope staying the same, the commission approves those changes. It stays the same.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is 7B. These are the repurposed earmark funds. I don't know if you recall last year we had a list of repurposed earmark funds and started out a lot and we whittled down.
30 million or something like that. That's much less.
We ended up with just over 6.1 million. The requirements on this were, I'm going to show you the distribution of these. So you can see each one of these funds over here were on a different earmark project. Those projects finished up, had balances remaining. The criteria was that we had to place those funds on a project and obligate them last year, and they had to be within a 50-mile radius. So what we did is chase projects down that would qualify for those funds within that 50-mile radius. In doing so, we freed up other monies off those projects. So these funds were put on, we freed up STP funds, and now we'll bring it back to the commission with a recommendation on what to do with those STP funds. So, first of all, in October, we came to the commission and requested to set aside Region 4's TAP funds, 885,000 of those funds as a match for the Tiger grant. So we would like to first fund that portion with these repurposed earmarks, and then take the balance, divide it by 4, and give it to each region to be used in their Transportation Alternative Program. And they would come back and program those each region would. Region 1 programmed 1.3 million of these funds already in the April 2017 commission meeting, and so their portion would be just over 322,000. So with the takedown for the Tiger earmark and with the takedown for what Region 1 has already programmed, the balances would go into each region's TAP program. And so we'd like to seek approval to distribute these funds as detailed.
Move to approve.
Second.
We moved and seconded that these repurposed funds be distributed as detailed. Is there any further questions or comments? Please.
I know it's tough being the new person, and just think about 6 months from now I won't be. Why did you choose to put it in their Transportation Alternatives Program?
That's a good question. So a lot of these earmarked funds were legislated, or they actually were legislatively picked, and they were distributed throughout the state. By putting them back into the TAP program, they can partner with locals and get them distributed back out statewide.
Thank you.
Okay.
And additionally, those projects are typically projects that are harder for us to fund. We don't have a lot of money in active transportation projects, and anytime we get a little bit of money that we can free up to put to that, we want to.
Excellent.
And there's just a ton of needs out there. SR 14 up Cedar Canyon. Rick wants to put some passing lanes, some bike lanes up there. That's what he's going to use his money on. So things like that, we just have a hard time getting to. Primarily why.
And maybe I just need to visit with Rick to learn a little bit more about the different the different pots, why this versus transportation solutions, or what some of the other uh, variable funding is for them.
It could have easily been transportation solutions. We could have got the exact same projects with the money. We have leveraged TAP funds specifically with the local governments, so they've been matching at a pretty high rate. We thought if we could leverage it in this program, we'd get more bang for the buck.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Other questions?
Mr. Chair, could I add one real quick clarification on what Bill said? The only money that's coming off the top of this is the potential match for Zion Park. So that comes off the top. The rest of it, 5-point-something million dollars, will be divided by 4. The Region 1 money is part of their 1/4 allocation. So it would not, both of those monies are not coming off the top.
Any further comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
And next item is 7C. This is the state infrastructure loan request. A little background on this: in last year's legislative session, Senate Bill 277 was passed, which directed that $19 million of the bond proceeds we got approval for would be provided to the SIB loan fund, would be put into that fund. It further stated that of that 19 million, 10 million of it would be set aside for MIDA, the Military Installation Development Authority. In following the SIB process, MIDA is requesting approval for an SIB loan for the $10 million being set aside for them legislatively. The funds are to be used for the design of the North Portal under US 40 in Wasatch County. We stopped by on a tour and looked at that location, talked about the project, where they'd go underneath the US 40 there and connect it to the other side, to the Jordanelle Parkway. I was looking for the name of the road on the other side of that. So yeah, we connect to the Jordanelle Parkway that would go through that portal. The request is for a term of 15 years at 2.25% interest. They're looking to structure this a little bit different than what we've done in the past. What they would like to do is for 2.25% for the full 15 years, but it wouldn't make any payments during the first 5 years. It would just capitalize the interest, which would be added in that 5th year, and then that takes the principal amount up to just over $11 million, and then the 2.25% for a 10-year payback at that point brings the annual payment at just over $1.2 million per year. The security for the loan is a corporate guarantee provided by a property owner, which will be replaced by assessments on adjacent property owners as this gets more developed. We have project location map. There's amortization chart that shows for 10 years, which would be 5 years out from the first draw. What the payment, principal, and interest would be. Lastly, just to show you the state infrastructure bank balance sheet. Capitalized funds in it right now, including the 19 million put in, is just over $44 million. We've 13 million of it is tied up in active loans. There's a cash balance sitting in the account of just over $1 million. And then we've got the active loans that are listed there, and we set aside the amount for the military installation, as well as the others that were also legislatively requested that haven't come through quite yet. And so there is, the funding is there to be able to handle this request. I don't know if there's anybody, I think somebody from MIDA was going to be here, but add additional comments or thoughts?
I do. This is my first for the MIDA approval. Anybody can borrow this particular loan, or the qualified borrowers.
On the SIB, it's for infrastructure improvements, and anyone can apply for these infrastructure loan funds.
Right, but the MIDA for military. That's what it is.
It's the military portion over time that confuses me.
Please.
Greg Curtis. I'm the government relations contract person with MIDA, and is doing some engineering work on all of these for MIDA. Paul Morris, the executive director and general counsel, the acting executive director and general counsel, got called out of town, so he is not able to be with us today. MIDA, the military portion associated with this is shortening a long history, but when the Olympics came, there was used to be a military facility over by Snow Basin that removed. So then the military with Congressman Hanson, they gave some acreage over in Summit County, with the idea that they could rebuild the facility there. Long and short of it, we ended up really MIDA moved there. And the purpose behind this entire development is the MIDA assessment area, and it's finally finalizing being created. There's an initial assessment area that right now is a couple hundred acres called Blue Ledge. Correct me if I get any of this wrong. I mean, I'm no professor here. There's about 200 acres. By the time it's entirely created, it will be 2,000 to 3,000, maybe even more acres on the east and west side of 40 there. And in the tax increment, will be used to help subsidize and build the military hotel. Okay? And so this will be a hotel that the military can use for recreation, conferences, etc. And they won't, I don't know if it's a military hotel wants it there to be exclusively theirs. I imagine it'll be a public-private partnership, and the military will have the deep rates, but then it will also have private hotel unit will lease out rooms when they're not using that, etc. For guests in this area. Eventually, if you're familiar with the area, Deer Valley Ski Resort has ski runs that are, half a mile up there. There will be a ski lift from the base down at US 40 built to the Deer Valley Resort, so you can park there, go up, ski at Deer Valley, and connecting runs up over the top, etc., and come down that. And part of the reason, we want to state for the SID and MIDA qualifies under the statute. Part of that is this will help relieve a lot of the traffic congestion when it gets done. And it's recognizing it's a work in progress. It's going to take years. But some of the congestion, Kimball Junction and is it 243, 248 leads. Well, I can say what leads from Kimball Junction into Park City. 224. That road, but it will alleviate some of the congestion because you'll be able to go ski Deer Valley without having to go up to Park City to get there. That's kind of, and so the legislature authorized the $10 million loan to start kind of
Get that going.
Jumpstart the project.
Yeah.
So who will be in charge of the operation of the ends and the maintenance of this facility?
Well, so when the portal's built, it's underneath the state road, so ultimately it'll become a state underpass in that sense. Is that right? No. Yep. Yeah, it'll be their bridge on state road, county road on the east side, and anything that's not within the state right of way will become a county road. MIDA doesn't have roads. I mean, they're working cooperatively with Wasatch County, etc. I mean, the county has to sign off on land use authority in all of the areas except for one small area, probably registered. Anyway, and so that's a kind of a MIDA, the county, and the state portion dealing with the portals and going underneath. So there'll be connectivity at the Mayflower interchange as well as the portal.
Any further questions or comments?
I have one.
Please.
Isn't it unusual to postpone first payment for 5 years? Is that?
Oh yeah. Yes, that is.
Bill, that's something you're comfortable with?
Yeah.
Well, if I understand this correctly, what's happening is we capitalize the interest for the first 5 years to allow the project to be built and the cash flow to be then begin to be generated so that the payment can be then made.
The cash flow is generated through the tax income that all of the ground is sitting on the basement. Presumably most of it's probably in green belt. And then it's sitting there, and when there's actually construction, hotels and condominiums and right buildings going on there, that will repay that. But there'll be a guarantee for Midas spends it. So Midas, this is something Midas doing because of their connection with the military and the hotel. Midas' biggest area of emphasis is up around here, and there's millions of dollars, not hundreds of millions of dollars of projects going on there. And so Midas is willing to do this and wants to do this, but they have made it clear we're not putting MIDA at risk. And so when they take down the money, they're going to have the corporate guarantee and ensure that it's going to be paid back. And then if the property owners don't want to participate through, voluntary assessment, then MIDA is collected. They get to collect the increment statutorily, the increment flows to them, the repayment coming back. And so MIDA's not interested in taking us out and defaulting our loan. They don't have any interest in it. Because they don't want any kind of a negative perception as a result to the kill Air Force Base and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of effort they're doing up there. And it was created, MIDA was created statutorily probably about 12 years ago with the intent of trying to further development in the Hill Air Force area to keep us from back foreclosures and getting the F-35 was instrumental in helping some of the development and keeping the base functioning and growing with the F-35 model. Maybe you have a question?
Yeah, I did. We actually wanted them to go on to tell people that one model is fairly recent and one is done. And two, what's the flavor of the local community? Very familiar with people in the area.
Well, one of the reasons they moved from Park City in Summit County around the corner and let's just say Wasatch County was much more hospitable and willing to work in all of this. Is that a fair way of saying it?
That's a fair way, and Wasatch County is very happy with the state.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, absolutely. That was done just a couple of weeks ago.
And if you'll recall, on the tour that we did with the commission, we had representatives from Wasatch County there with us.
Yeah, so Wasatch County is very supportive of this, and for years they've been contemplating this. I mean, Blue Ledges was brought into the MIDA assessment area, which is just on the west side of US 40. Okay, I want to say at least 7 years ago, and it's always been a chicken and an egg. The county saying, well, we don't have $10 million to jumpstart this, and MIDA saying we don't have it. Developers,
so it went through the legislature and now they have it.
Yes,
so
that's where
request.
That's where I got involved. Going to the legislature.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Okay.
I'm sorry.
If this project fall apart in a couple of years, is there any chance that this thing could unravel? If this goes forward today, is it a sure thing it's going to be completed?
It's a sure thing that you will get paid back. Okay, because MIDA is going to ensure that. So they'll either guarantee it with the corporate guarantee bond, and no guarantee. MIDA will check the financial stability of that along with Bill, before the money's taken down. And then secondly, the voluntary assessments. An assessment on someone's property owners agree to a property assessment, like a property tax on their property, and then if it's not paid back, you can foreclose on the property. So the loan will be fully secure. Is there a possibility that the project doesn't move forward, it collapses. I don't want to never say never, but I think, you know.
How do you not use the hotel?
Yeah. Well, the hotel will be secondary to the infrastructure, you know. I mean, you guys could have a, you know, but the hotel will be secondary to the infrastructure. And
This is a loan after all, and every loan has its risks.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
yeah. Any further questions or comments? No, I don't have any. Okay, Bill?
Yeah, I'm just going to add that as we've done with all of our SIB loans, once approved by the commission, we have legal counsel that we refer them to, who go through this type of stuff for city and county, to refer them to go through that process,
Right.
to draft up the documents before we issue the money.
Right. This is simply approval so that the document preparation can proceed. Not yet? Okay. Been moved and seconded that we approve the $10 million MIDA loan from the SID. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. It's been approved. Thank you. Now we have a number of items from our corridor preservation group. Lyle, I guess you're taking care of that?
Morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Okay, we have 4 applications and 1 de-obligation today. So let's go ahead and, if I can direct you to the fund balance sheet, bring you up to speed on where we are with the corridor preservation revolving loan balance. So as of November 20th, we had $16.8 million. Is that for me to do? Find it on the desktop.
Item 8, right at the bottom on the left.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we have $16.8 million with some additional revenue of $1.1 million coming in. The vast majority of that is from the motor vehicle rental tax. We had $7.9 million in purchases and expenses during that time period. And these are all the ones that were purchased. So I want to talk to you about, the first one we're going to talk about is this West Davis Corridor Chester Trip obligation. Back in September, I came to you and asked for $130,000 to purchase some property from the trips. They have chosen not to sell at this time. They understand that the project is about to get funded and would prefer to wait until we have actual project funding and make an offer under the threat of eminent domain and follow our conventional acquisition process. So I'll be asking for a de-obligation of those funds because it will become apparent why. But when you take that 7.9 minus the fund balance, it leaves us in balance of about $10 million, and we previously obligated $6.7 million, so that leaves us an unobligated fund balance of 3.28, and then we have 3.24 in applications today, so that's why that the obligation is important. It's also of note that the fund balance was as of November 20th, and if you look, our monthly revenue from the motor vehicle rental tax, about $1 million. So we already have probably another $750,000 from the rental car tax in the budget that we'll be seeing the next time we meet. So we're not turning over couch cushions quite yet. All right, are there any questions regarding any of the past actions that we've taken.
So it would have been cheaper, Lyle, to have the quick property purchase today rather than going back and doing the eminent domain later?
Typically that means that they believe that they can get a better offer for relocation eligibility. So that's my bet.
Okay.
In this particular case, there's vacant land, so I believe they can probably get a better offer. All right, let's go to the next under 8A, which is the deobligation request. Again, this is the Tripp property. Back in June, I came to you with a favorable recommendation, which you approved for $130,000 to make an offer on a piece of vacant land. They have declined our offer, and so we'd like to put those funds back in the pot to make an offer to somebody who is willing to accept our offer. I come to you with a favorable recommendation from the advisory council to deobligate those funds.
Move to approve. Okay. Moved and seconded that we deobligate the $130,000. Any further questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
So the potential purchaser or buyer for this particular parcel will know that this is on the West Corridor location. So is there going to be an option knowing that they may be also eminent domain?
There isn't an alternative for the buyers. They're just waiting until the project is funded and then you got to buy it in. Is that what they do?
And in Utah, a seller is required to disclose anything that is material to the sale. And the fact that we now have a funded and it's an approved environmental document and a funded project is something very material to any potential buyer. So they'd have to disclose that. All right, if I can direct your attention to 8B. This is a request that we received on Highway 89. It's a hardship request. It's a single-family residence owned by Leilani Talbot. She's owned this home for over a decade, currently tenant-occupied because their family was relocated to Texas for a job opportunity. And so the house is currently listed for sale, and if you look at the map, where we plan to build an underpass, the access goes right onto South Mountain Road, and we would prefer that it not be there. So additionally, the family owns properties to the east, and north in this picture is to the right. So we hope to engage the developer who has the adjoining properties under contract and see if we can't sell the property without the access so that it can continue to have a beneficial use but not adversely impact the project. So we reviewed this in the advisory council. The price based on the approved appraisal was $240,000, and I come to you with a favorable recommendation to obligate those funds so that we can make an offer to Ms. Talbot.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman. Second. Moved and seconded that this property be approved for negotiation. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next application, the remaining three applications are on the West Davis corridor. These will be the final corridor preservation applications for the West Davis corridor. Everything moving forward will be under our conventional acquisition process with a funded project. So it's with a heavy heart that I come to you today.
Including the refund of all of these purchases that we've made, right? To the preservation fund?
That would be cash flowed for the project. As you know, the first tranche of funding for this project is think only $1 million. And we expect to get additional funding moving forward. So the first year is things are tight, which is why we're still coming to today.
Right. Okay.
All right. So under 8C, we have an acquisition application forwarded by Barbara and Stanley Adams. It is a property located at 2970 South, 2000 West in Syracuse, owned and occupied by the property owners. The property is zoned single-family residence with 2.3 lots per acre. The property is about 2.5 acres, and we had it appraised for $195,000. If you look on the map there, it's in the alignment, and they are choosing to keep the part with the residents on it, and are just selling us the part that is, requesting to sell the property that is actually in the corridor, and the part that is severed and has no access in the after condition. So,
keeping the purple portion.
Yes. So that comes to about $78,000 an acre, and we reviewed it in the advisory council, and I come to a favorable recommendation to obligate $195,000 from the fund to make an offer for that back parcel.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded that this be approved. Is there further questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. That's been approved.
Thank you. All right, then next one is under 8D, and this is, as you know, the three major focuses of the corridor preservation are to preserve bare ground, alleviate hardships, which we have done on the first two, and the third one, which is one that's the most challenging, is preventing imminent development. And that's what we have today. So typically we work with communities to try to slow down development in a developing corridor. And in this particular case, property owner combined with a neighbor, and they platted out and got approved a 16-lot subdivision. And the property is about 6.25 acres, and we had it appraised. The appraisal came in at $1.9 million, which is about $304,000 an acre. And I just did some back of the envelope math. If they actually developed it and put homes on each of those 16 lots, we're looking at about $6 million and relocation. So we'd prefer to preserve this ground as bare and prevent the development. If you look at what they provided us, they were magnanimous enough to offer us some post-acquisition suggestions with what we can do. We could probably salvage about 9 lots in the after condition. So there would be a potential payback after the project when we surplus the property. And with the benefit of that, I come to you with a favorable recommendation to obligate $1.9 million from the fund so that we can make this purchase.
Been moved and seconded that this purchase for $1.9 million be approved. Is there further questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That's also been approved.
Thank you. Okay, the final application, also on the West Davis corridor, is just a little bit to the south of the one that we let's go back up here. So this is the Gruber Fielding property. These are located at 3138, 3140, and 3144 South 2000 West in Syracuse. Properties are owned and occupied by Robert and Robin Gruber and their parents. The property is horse property. It has 2 modular homes, a barn, and a roping arena on it. It's about 7.9 acres. We had it appraised for $910,000. And if I show you the map, you'll see why this is different. So you just barely approved that property a tiny bit to the north. the Adams family. And the Adams family, we were just purchasing the back vacant property. This particular property actually contains several homes and improvements, which is why we're seeing a difference in the price there. And again, in the after condition, the property has no access, so they've asked us to do a total purchase of the entire 7.9 acres. I come to you with a favorable recommendation to obligate that amount so that we can make an offer.
Most of that property, however, will be surplus once the project is completed.
Yes, as presently situated, there is no access in the after condition. So we'll need to figure that out after the project.
I'll entertain the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded that this property also be approved for purchase. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lyle. Appreciate that. Diane, it's good to have you back. Let's move now into our report section. I think, Jason, you have an administrative rule review to start us off.
Kind of squeeze everything in. My intent was not to bring it up on screen unless you need me to do so. So I was going to speak fairly general about what the rule changes are.
Let him just speak to it. Okay.
So this rule is the maintenance responsibility at intersections, overcrossings, and interchanges between Class A roads and Class B and C roads. So basically it speaks to the state responsibilities and the local responsibilities for maintenance of bridges and roads where their facilities interact with our facilities. So earlier discussion with the MIDA loan, there was talk about the structure that would be created there on 40. Because 40 is a state road, that would be a UDOT responsibility, whereas the road underneath that would be the local municipality's responsibility. So what we've done is, through a extensive interaction with a joint highway committee, our own maintenance and folks, and talking back and forth and coming up with a change to this rule that meets most everyone's desires. The main changes that have happened with this rule is first on the bridges. So all of our bridges are inspected every 2 years. When I say all of, I mean all within the state. And Karma can correct me at any time, but he knows I love talking about bridges. It's my second favorite thing in the world. So what this says, what this rule says, is that when we go out and inspect the local bridges, that we will invite the local municipality that's responsible for that bridge during that inspection. We will detail the basically the rehab responsibilities that need to take place on that bridge to keep it in good repair, and that the locals will be responsible to do those repairs. If they fail to do those repairs and it results in basically a shortening of the life of that structure, then in this rule it speaks that we will meet with them to negotiate the responsibilities for the cost of that repair that would fall upon UDOT in this case, because it goes beyond the everyday or the every year maintenance responsibilities. So it doesn't speak that they are totally responsible, but it does speak to the fact that we will sit down and talk about who owns the responsibility for those costs. So if I go real quick to the highlighted part of it, so the way it speaks, it says, if the local jurisdiction does not perform the preventive maintenance work and rehabilitation work becomes necessary, the local jurisdiction and UDOT will meet to negotiate how the cost of the rehab work will be performed and shared. We will talk to them about how that will be built up. Initially, we had that. Yeah, basically that's where we were to start with. Was if you don't do it, we'll come in there and do it, and we'll send you a bill. And obviously, Joint Highway Committee, as you can imagine, wasn't necessarily thrilled with that part of it. And we felt that this was a good compromise, and the fact that we were inviting them to the inspections and providing them with the inspection report every 2 years gave us something to stand on to say. Right. So that's the most major change in this policy. The second change in this policy has to do with the signing. So obviously we're taking care of all the signing that those that are driving the state road are seeing. When a local road connects in, say there's a stop condition that connects onto 3500 South, there's a stop sign involved there. In the past, it's been basically totally the responsibility of the local jurisdiction. What we have changed here is that if there is a knockdown that is a safety sensitive issue, UDOT will go in there and stand that back up. If you don't want people going into without a stop sign and being involved in a crash. So we'll stand that back up, and then if the local municipalities don't like the sign standard, the post, or whatever we put in, they can come back later and change that out. But we want to make sure that we respond immediately to any safety issues when it comes to the signing on the side of the street. And in addition, we have in there that says coordination with UDOT to identify and correct fading / loss of reflectivity, or retroreflectivity. So if a sign starts to fade out and no longer meet the standards for retroreflectivity, that the locals will work with us and coordinate with us to get that sign replaced. Which is a little bit of change. In the past, we always figured those signs were their responsibility in total, but those safety sensitive ones, obviously, we have an interest in keeping them up. So those are the two major changes. Everything else is more of just to rewrite the standard form and bring it up to it. Just a little bit more information. We looked at the number of signs that we believe that we would be responsible for with this change versus prior. It's not that many, because there really aren't that many knockdowns and replacements that would fall on our shoulders that used to fall on the locals. We did a study of Region 2, and it's about 20 a year. So if you extrapolate that out, it's looking at maybe 80 to 100 statewide, which I don't know if they had the most knockdowns, but I know Region 4 has the most signs. If you think about it, just because of geographical area. So we kind of looked at that. That's what we're currently at.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we have a report from our internal auditors today. Carlos, would you kind of set the stage for what we're about to hear, so that the commissioners will be aware of why this becomes important and why the action will be taken in January?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. As Shane comes forward, when I hear Shane, I think of quality people. We have two quality Shanes here in the room right now. But Shane is one of our auditors, and he's been responsible for putting together the recommendations for the commission for performance audits. The state statute indicates that the Transportation Commission is responsible for prioritizing the performance audits that we work on as a department. And so Shane has gone through a process. He's going to describe that to provide with the commission the recommendation from the Internal Audit Division. And the idea here is he'll describe that process, answer any questions you might have on any of the audits that he's proposing to conduct over this next year. Then what we thought you could do is you could spend the next month thinking about it, asking him any questions, and the idea is to come back with approval for a prioritized list. I'll say A because it may not be the list here, but come back for a prioritized list of audits that would then be conducted over the next calendar year, with obviously reporting back to the commission on the results of those audits.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that background. Shane?
I think Carlos just summed it up perfectly. But I think it's easier if I give you these handouts so you can see it in paper copy and prove it at your own time. Like he had mentioned, you may have recalled a couple of years ago the Legislative Audit General released a performance audit report to UDOT, and one of the recommendations was for the Internal Audit Division to have a more risk-based audit approach, which means for us to come up with a systematic way of collecting what we felt were our risks and vulnerabilities, and then engage our audit projects focusing on those specific concerns. What you're seeing is there are two documentations attached in the handout, and both of them are a cumulative effort that we went through over the last year to come up with this audit proposal. And I'd like to explain to you what we did briefly and then vet out any questions you might have. We call it an enterprise-wide risk assessment, which means that it really consists of 3 or 4 parts. One is to work with each of the leadership teams throughout UDOT to ask them what their concerns and vulnerabilities are, what keeps them up at night, and what are the challenges that they see as they proceed forward with new projects. We also interviewed and surveyed a select number of staff, the general employees, those who work on our roads, to those who reconcile our bank accounts, to ask them similar questions. With all of their responses, you can imagine we got a lot of feedback. With 1,800 employees, there's a lot of things that people have to say. We came up with a systematic way of prioritizing and analyzing each of those responses, and with the help of Mr. Braceras and Mr. Marshall, the Internal Audit Division went through and essentially put a risk ranking on those concerns. And that's what you're seeing on the screen, is we have about 58 different concerns. You also have it in your handout. Now, when we look at risk, we don't look at risks as a negative thing. Risks is essential and vital to ensure that we are doing the right things, because it helps us to be aware that there is collateral damage and possibilities of vulnerabilities creeping up to everything that we do. What we care about as an internal audit shop is whether we recognize the vulnerabilities tied to those risks and whether we have adequate controls, awareness, or understanding of how to address them when they arise. In doing so, we become more efficient, and we become better stewards of the fund, as well as our responsibility to the public in building roads. What you see on the left is the original region, if you're looking on the screen, of where the risk originated. And then on the right is just a general summarization of what they were talking about. What you'll find is as we do this risk assessment every year, you're going to see this change. You're going to see this list change, and it should change because we're going to see certain things coming up in greater light at the moment we're doing things, and then some things that are just as equally important. Maybe perhaps we have a lot of manpower and support to address. So for our list, it's going to go a lot lower down the chain. If you look at the project proposal, and I will put it on the screen as well. PDF. Takes a while. If you look at our project proposal, we propose for the calendar year 2018 that we look at these top 10 considerations. And what we're asking of you in this particular meeting is to essentially take a look and familiarize yourselves with some of these concerns. We've listed the risk concern, what are the possible vulnerabilities, and then the proposal that we would do to address and provide third-party validation or confirmation on what we can do to improve in these areas. We hope that you will have time this December to look at it. So on next commission meeting, you have a chance to vote in full faith and confidence that the internal audit division of UDOT is addressing those areas that you feel are also important to you. We anticipate in the future, as we do this risk assessment and have an audit proposal, we would like for you in November of every year to have a chance to look at it for your vote the following December, so we can hit the ground running at the start of every new year. I don't know if you have any questions so far with the information that we're seeing. The reason why it's important is part of the recommendation from the legislative auditors was to have an independent governing body look at the things that we're proposing and to give your consent and vote. And that's the reason why it's being put on the table, and it will be from time to time through these meetings. So, are there any questions that I can answer?
As a clarification, the starting with page 2 and beyond, where it talks about the risk assessment summary, that's a listing of all of the things you heard as you inquired throughout the organization. Is that correct?
It is.
And then what you've done is you've said some of these bubble to the top, and that's the 10 that you're proposing to be addressed during the year 2018, with not only the risk and the possible vulnerability, but the proposed action that you would take and report back to the commission.
Correct.
So we've got a full summary of all that you have uncovered, and then you have selected 10 that really seem to be the most important to be addressed during the next year.
Yeah, we coordinated heavily with the leadership teams of each group and region to come up with this top 10 list. We don't anticipate completing every single project because there are contingencies that occur throughout the year, but if we are asked to do an audit, we want it to be as transparent as possible, and having a schedule is an efficient and effective way for us to go about doing business.
So the request, I think, of the commission is maybe a review of the 57 or so items, and then how that was distilled down to the 10 and the proposed action. So if there's any questions about that in January, we would be able to address that and then approve this course of action for the internal auditors in January, according to the statute.
That's exactly what we're looking for, okay. And I will ensure that you have my contact information for further questions.
Carlos?
Mr. Chair, you used the word uncovered, and I would like to maybe suggest that the word would be, these have all been identified and brought forward by UDOT employees to our internal auditors. So okay. Maybe...
yeah, uncovered is probably the wrong
word. It implies
word.
Maybe that we're hiding things.
Yeah, we were hiding things, and that's not the case. Certainly I misspoke in that regard. These are things that were brought to you as you made inquiries of all of the employees throughout the organization. Their concerns. Yeah.
Of their concerns, correct.
Right. Better say it. You have to say.
Yeah. Please.
I have a question on item 20 from Region 1. Item 21. I'm not quite sure if I understand what that means. Night work may not follow the same quality as daytime work on road. Does that mean night work may not produce the same quality? I don't know what quality means.
So there's a concern that because of the amount of night work that we have going on, that it wouldn't have the same quality outcome as during the day, just because it's simply, you can't see it as well as during the day. And so the audit group was asked to look at, are we getting the same quality by working at night as during the day?
Okay, that's what I assumed that meant.
Yep.
Any other questions? Yes.
Just acronym clarification, DTS means?
Department of Technology Services.
Thank you.
DTS, thank you. There are a few acronyms. I try to make it as reader-friendly as possible. Thank you.
And Commissioner Law, there was a request from Commissioner Holbrook maybe a year ago to put together a list of acronyms. I'm not sure
I gave it to her that day.
No, we did.
But to Commissioner Holbrook, but did we get
We did not. Commissioner White.
We would love to share with you our big fat list of acronyms.
I will be prepared for a test.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess DTS is not
Then
on
in
it.
January, there's a test done if you accept it. Yeah.
January of 2022.
Okay.
So,
Further comments or questions?
yeah, would
on
you
the
please, Shane, go back to the first question about the night versus day? So if the audit shows that there's not much quality on the night time, are we going to discontinue the night work?
I don't think we will. We'll find processes to make it so that the quality, we are receiving the high quality at night. We'll figure out what those processes need to be so we can continue to work at night. It's a tool we can't take out of the toolbox.
I don't think we should.
But I think we should point out that, you know, if that's one that the commission wants to prioritize, that's fine. I don't think it's part of the
not part of the top 10.
So.
And I think in that particular concern, it wasn't that they have seen and witnessed and verified that there are quality issues. It was one of those things where, because of the increased road demand, as night work becomes increasingly needed, are we making sure we're taking all of the precautions necessary? And that's the reason why it's down in the 20th area.
With the new LED lights, you can see just perfect. With the nighttime as the daytime.
Yeah. Great questions. Any additional questions?
Good job, Shane.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll be back to this subject in January then. Thank you. We appreciate that. Now we've got a couple of our reports from our divisions. There was, about 15 people from traffic management here earlier, and so they're all looking forward, as are we, to this report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name's Rod Clayton. I'm the director of the Traffic Management Division, and I'm here representing nearly 100 talented and dedicated transportation professionals. And as you mentioned, a lot of them are here from my leadership team. And I appreciate their support and assistance in preparing the presentation that I've got for you today. I'm going to start this morning reporting on the condition of our assets, and we're very excited to have a new reporting capability in the Socrata dashboard with live data about the performance of our system. And to do that, so the asset classes that we have primary responsibility for are traffic signals and ATMS devices. And those two systems are maintained by my division and operated. Oh, advanced traffic management system. It's electronic message boards, the ability to measure speeds and count vehicles and things like that. So first focus here is traffic signals, and this gives you a sense of the growth of our system statewide. Regions 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the smaller bars from left to right, and then the tall bar is the statewide total. We're up to 1,206 signals statewide that UDOT owns and operates, and we added 20 in the last year. Remarkably consistent growth, 7% growth in the last 5 years, 14% growth in the last 10 years. Very consistent in that way. Just give you an idea of how the traffic signal system is growing. This is data on the condition. Every year, our signals are visited by technicians, and they perform a preventative maintenance checklist on the signal and evaluate the conditions. It's a pretty subjective evaluation at this point, which explains some of the fluctuation of the data. But this is still telling us where we need to focus our resources and create projects and things to address some of these issues. It does show that 83% as of this year are rated average or better. And the 17% that show up in the red category, it's not that it's a safety problem. This is not like a bridge sufficiency rating. All the signals are 100% of them are operating safely. This has more to do with limitations that affect our ability to operate the signal efficiently, such as conduits in the ground that get crushed and things like that. So that's what this represents.
Are all traffic signals currently LED based?
Yes. Yes. That was a conversion that happened about just under 10 years ago. Wanted to give you a glimpse of, we've got a series of measures that we've put in place. Here's one to help us improve our performance. We're tracking the number of days that it takes to close a work order for signal maintenance and timing. You can see that our goal is 5 days or less, and 3 of our 5 groups are meeting that goal. The other 2 have some pretty specific challenges as far as geography, and you can see that this is for regions 1, 2, 3, and 4. Green is our statewide signal timing group, and they have a hard time getting to some of the locations within 5 days. So, but this gives us an idea of where we need to allocate resources to assist with our ability to respond to requests for maintenance that come in. So shifting to our ATMS system, we reached 2,194 devices in those 6 categories that you see down below. It's a large number of devices, and the group works hard to keep those systems up and maintained, and I'll show you some data in that regard. But just to give you an idea of growth, so we had 5% growth between fiscal years 16 and 17, and we're on track for 5% growth again in fiscal year 18. So
that's on the 5% of last year is
correct.
Not the same as 5% of this year.
Compounded, correct.
Yeah, you're getting compounded.
Yeah, and if you look historically, we've had in the last 5 years 30% growth. In the last 10 years, 165% growth. So the ATMS system is growing significantly. What causes this? We're putting devices in strategic locations, working with the regions to identify what those needs are. A lot of them come through projects, such as the Bangerter and 600 West interchange project that was recently completed. That added 5 traffic monitoring stations, 5 CCTV cameras, and 2 variable message signs. So this gives you an idea of how the devices have grown over the years. This is looking at the operation of those devices. This is an aggregation of all devices and their availability. Our goal is to have 95% of devices available at any given time, and we reached that goal for the first time this year. We're excited about that. It's a 12-month moving average, so that's good. That shows some stability in the system. Now looking at each of the device types, and I'm going to move through this quickly, but our CCTV cameras are experiencing increasing stability, meeting our 95% goal. Our WIS stations are our weather stations, and these are used to create weather forecasts. And you can see right around that 2008 time frame when emphasis was put on the support of our maintenance sheds, we realized that these RWIS devices were critical to that process, and reallocated resources and got their performance up quite a bit. It's also critical with our new snow removal performance measure that these devices are operational, and so Jeff Williams in the weather group has these coming right along.
Right, back to the camera closeness. Are those improvements reflective of improvements in the technology itself in the cameras?
There's some of that. There's also the ability for us to communicate with those cameras via fiber optics, and we can monitor them more closely to know when they're having issues. Yeah. Okay. This is a look at our traffic monitoring stations. These are the devices that measure speed, primarily on the interstate, and also do vehicle counts. We've likewise experienced an increase in stability in our TMS stations as well. Here's a look at express lane plazas. This is a relatively new measure for us. These are pretty complex and challenging systems to maintain with all the checks and interactions with databases and things to make sure the billing is right. This is a challenging system to maintain, but we've got it.
I'm not sure I understand that term, express lane plaza.
Okay.
Sure.
That's the combination of devices that are at each of the locations that check to see if a vehicle has an express lane transponder.
Okay.
And then we'll do the appropriate billing.
Thank you.
So there's readers above that check for that, and some systems that operate behind the scenes. Ramp meters are doing well. Our variable message signs. This is reflecting the age of our system and some of the challenges that we have with aging variable message signs. These are being addressed through the new end-of-life life cycle maintenance funding that was provided within the last year or two, and this number should go up significantly. I wanted to give you a glimpse of a new. Brian did a great job this morning, earlier, talking about reliability and introducing the concepts that he talked about on the interstate. The Federal Highway Administration has created a measure for reliability that every state DOT in the country is implementing, and we've got it up and running here in Utah. And this is a glimpse of what that looks like for us. So this is brand new. You see here, reliability has to do with the consistency of the travel time, just at a basic level, and the feds want it reported as a person mile measurement. So you can see here that in Dixie, Mag, and rural areas, we've got pretty good performance, and most of our challenge lies within the Wasatch Front Regional Council boundary. The new element, and Brian talked a little bit about this, is this data now gives us the ability to see off of the interstate system. And so this is non-interstate person miles, and I wanted to refer back to a discussion that you had with Mag, I think, last month, sorry. And if you, hopefully this looks familiar. The discussion centered on the existence of the grid system in Salt Lake County versus Utah County, and the lack of alternate routes in Utah County. And that's significant, and that actually shows up in this new performance measure, which is interesting. And if you look over here, Mag has less than half of the person miles that Wasatch Front has. Yet they have the same percentage of reliable person miles on the arterial system. So that tells me that they have a much diminished capacity to handle that demand. So it was just interesting to see that correlation of what we all knew, but never had the data to measure. So we'll have the capability to look at some relationships that we haven't had in the past. So as far as, that's the condition report. As far as needs, we've got these 4 programs in the Traffic Management Division for signal operations, ATMS deployment, and maintenance of the ATMS system. and our current funding level is sufficient, and we're not proposing any change in funding. I was going to introduce the concept of the new HERE data in this accomplishments section. Brian did a fantastic job, so I won't say any more, but just to add that the data that the capability that's added is the ability to look at rural and rural interstate and non-interstate routes, as well as freeway routes. And Brian showed great examples on the interstate. If you notice in his graphic, that there was also data on the Bangalore Highway and on the Mountain View Corridor. We're very excited, and there's a lot of uses for it. Brian demonstrated one this morning, and I'm going to share a couple of other uses. So here's another example from Region 2. They've been a leader in jumping into this new data set. This is a fairly common exercise, I think, that maintenance crews have in performing their crack sealing. The question is, when should we do it? And a lot of time the work happens at night. There was a desire to do it in the day. They used the new data to plan when that should be, and then they actually monitored it in real time to make sure that they weren't impacting traffic to any significant degree. So kudos to Region 2 for that. Here's a unique look at traffic. This is the month of October in 2017. This is called a heat map. If you look at the pop out on the right there, time of day is along the x-axis, so midnight is on the left, and then through midnight is the next day on the right, and the distance along the route is on the y-axis. So it takes a little time to orient yourself to what this is showing, but essentially, if blobs of red are bad, and that's not that complicated.
That's how he explains it to me.
So the worst day in the month was October 6th, Friday, and this was the day of the BYU Boise State game in Provo. BYU fans hadn't lost faith yet, and so but this gives you the ability to look day to day. I mean, we all know that traffic varies by day. A tool like this helps you to see just how much it can change in a given day. Here's another way to use this data. This was the incident on November 22nd that closed I-15 and the ramp to I-84. This new information allowed us to monitor the travel times on the alternate routes and showed some surprising results where the travel time on Main Street nearly tripled. The other routes, it was just in the range of doubling. This will allow us to plan more effectively for these incidents. Instead of assuming that it would be more of a balanced demand, we can look at what's actually happening. Another use, looking at before and after studies. So this data is for the turn on of the northbound Bangalore on-ramp to I-15, the ramp meter. And when the ramp meter was turned on, what happened? So you can see throughout the AM peak hour that there were decreases across the board, but in the busiest 7 a.m. hour, where the travel time experienced a 24% decrease in the time that it took to get from Lehigh, Maine to the I-215 South Junction. So the ability to perform before and after studies is going to be powerful for us. I want to mention another accomplishment, significant development that has got some national attention, and that is our Redwood Road Connected Vehicle project. And this is a collaboration with the Utah Transit Authority, and involves us setting up a system with them where our traffic signals actually communicate via radio to their buses. And when their buses are behind schedule, they receive priority at the traffic signal. This is a unique system. There's about 24 of these deployments of connected vehicle across the country, but they're generally in pilot and demonstration projects. We believe ours is the first operational system. So if you're a passenger on bus route 217 today, you're going to get the benefit of this new capability that we've got running out there. working with UTA, the goal is to increase the reliability of that bus route from 86 to 94%, and hopefully to encourage the further use and patronage of the transit system in that area. We really want to set the stage with this for future deployments, and we're looking at expanding this into the Covert 1 BRT corridor, and also looking at providing a priority system for snowplows as they plow routes, because it would make more sense to keep them moving through the traffic signals than having them have to stop. And all of this will set the stage for the point in the future when the deployment of this technology reaches enough passenger vehicles that we start to see the benefit of that and all the safety enhancements that can be made. The feds tell us that nearly 81% of non-impaired crashes will be eliminated once that happens. So we really want to be ready for that because of the implications that it has for the system and our citizens.
And we did one of those for Christmas.
Yeah. It's also, this project has won a couple of awards. It got a Washoe Quality Award and an award from the annual conference. Blaine Leonard is here this morning. He's leading our program. That's a very good work.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a fantastic job, and Blaine is providing leadership at the national level. Last year I told you about a project in Moab that used a new capability in the signal controllers to provide what's called peer-to-peer programming, tying the signal operations together. That project this year received the ASHTO's Francis B. Francois Award, which is a big deal, I'm told. And we're proud of Matt Luca and the team for what they were able to accomplish. But I wanted to mention some additional peer-to-peer logic projects that we've implemented. And one example is on the Mountain View corridor, where the corridor was constructed with the vision that it would become a freeway at some point, which means that in the interim, each cross street has closely spaced intersections, traffic signals, and those are a challenge to operate. This peer-to-peer logic allows us to tie the operation together of those two signals in a way that makes it more efficient and also safer. The safety comes from being able to show a consistent signal indication for the upstream and the downstream signal, so that if a driver focuses on the wrong signal head, the ramifications of that. Correct. Correct. And we also get some operational benefit, and I'll show you what that is. This is a nerdy slide that shows arrivals on green, each one of those dots. But what I want to point out is, before we made this change, east and west, 85% of the vehicles were arriving on green, but the signal cycle length was fixed in the daytime between 90 and 120 seconds, if you can see that. That fixed cycle length is somewhat inefficient. It provides some benefits, being able to coordinate things, but it's inefficient. So with the peer-to-peer, we were able to let that run more free, decrease the average cycle length by about 20%, and increase the arrivals on green while doing that from 85 to 88, a slight increase. So there's a lot of benefits that we can get from this peer-to-peer capability, and this Mountain View corridor is not the only place where we've got this implemented. It's several places around the state. We're actually looking right now at shuffling internal resources to have somebody work on this full time to get more of these benefits back from the system. We're looking at, just briefly, yesterday Carlos talked about the two building blocks that are in the governor's budget. It's related to a new process to ensure that we have every single incident that happens out on the road actively managed at the appropriate level. And so we worked in 2017 with the regions and to identify a new process that will accomplish that. And we're excited to implement that and anxiously watching the process to see if that happens. The key objectives in that process are investing in TOC staff to reduce turnover and to enhance their capability. We want to make sure that every incident is actively managed, so that we're making good decisions with our resources and messaging correctly to the public, and minimizing the impact of that incident on the drivers. And part of that is being able to have INT at every crash where they're needed, and we want to more effectively share information with you, our UAT partners, so that we can monitor performance.
How many INTs do we have here?
13. We're looking at adding 12. I want to mention briefly, this is a flavor of a new technology that we just became aware of that has some potential for us. This is using fiber optics to measure vibration that's generated by vehicles. So the animation that you see is for Interstate 29 in Fargo, North Dakota. It's the only installation in the United States. And where the fiber parallels the road, it's measuring speed. Where it crosses the road, it's counting vehicles. And we think we have a lot of mileage out there in fiber, and this could provide the ability to get data back in sensitive areas such as Little Cottonwood Canyon or other places where the environment is so sensitive.
Because of the holiday with the motorcycle rally.
Well, it's a company. It's a company that's that it's actually declassified military technology, and the company is now marketing it. Yeah. You can't. So we're looking at this. You can see some of our priorities in the coming year. I don't want to. I think we're running short on time, so I'll just end there.
Thank you. Questions for Rob?
Fantastic job, Rob.
Thank you. Interesting how technology is changing the way in which you're able to think about and control traffic. So kudos for keeping track of these technological changes. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? I think, Robert, you have agreed to come back in January. Okay. Is Linda here?
Yes, she went back in the back.
Yeah, there she is. She's in the back. Let's go to our informational items. We want to end here pretty soon because I guess we've got caterers for lunch that are delivering things. Let's go to our informational items, commission committee report. Donna? Okay, Sandy? Okay, the written report's been submitted? Well, good for you, and it's welcome back, and everybody else to your home, I think. Nagi?
I had a UDOT at a CIB meeting yesterday. We had a several project added and other millions of dollars in this thing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I got nothing to say. All right. I got a email right now from PTA for emergency meeting. You guys, for you in business. Okay, good. Well, we got to find out about it. Right. Now let's see, Linda. We want an abbreviated introduction here to this legislative update.
The commission will remember that the legislature initiated this governance task force for the summer, and there's been a number of us that have been involved in that over the last several months, and the report has been addended to our information here, and Linda will give us a brief overview of what's coming out of that legislative initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you have a copy of the complete report that came out of that task force and were reported to the Transportation Interim Committee. We don't have time to go through the whole thing here. Suffice it to say that the task force itself had 7 meetings, multiple other meetings within the 3 working groups. Kent was a member of the funding working group. You can see in the report that's before you, it has all the recommendations that came out of each one of those working groups. I won't go over them today. I'll just highlight the ones that could potentially have an indirect impact for the commission. One of the issues is around the prioritization of capacity projects. There is a lot of interest in opening up the TIF to use for other modes of transportation, specifically transit, active transportation. I think that's still a really big question mark about whether the legislature is willing to open up the state funding to other modes of transportation. There's a lot of interest among members to say they are only willing to do that if there are meaningful governance changes within UCA. So I really don't know where that one is going to end. There is a lot of interest in getting a stronger connection between transportation, economic development, land use, sustainable land use. So I think if the legislature does do something that gives a little bit more emphasis for economic development and how the commission is prioritizing the TIF funds, if they do that, the commission, I anticipate the language would be written building upon the existing statutory provisions, that you would then go through a rulemaking process to specify exactly how that's going to work and what your prioritization process will be. The last time you did that, it took over a year to get all of that together. Before the rule was finalized, it went to a committee designated by the Legislative Management Committee. The legislators had a chance to weigh in before you finalized the rule, so I anticipate it would follow that same process. We anticipate that they may include a provision for the department to kind of boost up our planning efforts. The unified plan, which is led primarily by the NGOs and local planning, would still continue exactly as is. They're looking at a higher level, policy level plan that the department would create. I'm calling it a vision, the Utah Strategic Transportation Vision, and that the department would develop that plan, consultation with the NGOs, with the commission, report that to you, and that could serve as a basis that could help drive some of your prioritization decisions. So any prioritization would have to advance that bigger vision. So it could be the strategic goals we have today about preserving the system, increasing safety, improving mobility, but perhaps it could come up with better, tighter measures for economic development, supporting job creation, job centers, those types of things. So that could have another impact on the community. But all of this is just up in the air right now. I don't know if the task force tentatively, I'm looking over at Alex, but he's the guy. Tentatively, they were planning on another meeting in January, so I think they're still waiting to see what happens. But Alex is the guy on all of this stuff. So.
Yes, Alex has been very helpful in all of the subgroups and as well as the task force, and very conversant on everything that's been happening.
Mm-hmm. That's my report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think for the commission, we need to be very aware of not only the recommendations that will be made to the legislature, but the things that come out of this legislature, this next session, because of this task force. Be aware that there's likely to be a lot of discussion about governance, about reporting, about revenues, everything concerning transportation. There will be a lot of discussion in the legislature this year, and so let's be aware of those discussions and the ideas that get moved forward.
Carlos, I had written down that you were going to report on briefly on a meeting that you had. The budget, yeah.
And Rob kind of, pointed it out there in his presentation. The governor released his budget. He shows he wants to keep the funding stable for the department. His building blocks that he's proposing are really the biggest increase in FTEs for the department in many, many years. So proposing 12 new FTEs for IMTs and 12 new FTEs to staff the traffic operations center. It's really recognition that operating the system is becoming much more important. That gives us the ability now to work with our appropriations committee, the IGB committee at the legislature, to see if that's something that they agree with and support. And if they do, then we'd be able to move forward in the next fiscal year, so starting in July 1 of next year. I think that was probably the most significant part that came out of that. And those were our two requests, and I think we got them both. So we'll see. Next step.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, I don't know that the task force will, but the task force has a number of recommendations that they have made for the legislature for the consideration, and then the legislature will need to act. But there's been a whole series of recommendations on economic development, on funding, on governance that have been prepared and will be forwarded to the legislature. That's right. It should be rather interesting. Welcome, Gail. Good to see you. Good to see both of you with us. Now, let's take a quick look at the upcoming transportation meetings for next year. They're listed here for you. On January the 19th, we'll be in Bluffdale. February the 16th back here. And then in March, the 15th and 16th in Springdale. So that's the next quarter as we look forward. So be sure to put those in your plans for the location, be in Bluffdale, here in Salt Lake County, and then here at the complex in February, and down south in March, as is our norm. Any questions about those, or any other items that we need to bring before the commission today? I'll entertain a motion. About that long. Thanks everybody for being here. It's been a very productive meeting.